Lakeisha, thank you so much for coming onto the show. Now, I know you've been part of the LLAG community for quite some time, but I didn't know that you were actually a professional photographer. You currently run a company called Beyond the Pond Photography. What got you to start this company, and how has business been since the outbreak?
So I started my business in 2016. I was actually working at Airmark at the University of Delaware at the time, and I had ended up having to separate myself from my job after I got sick for a little while. And I was awarded the opportunity to get into photography because I wanted to do it for a long time, just never had the money or the time, the opportunity. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, great. This is a great opportunity. And actually got started with music photography. I wanted to support my friends who were in the local music scene. So I started going to some of their open mics, small shows, things like that, taking pictures of them, their shows, the crowd, things like that. And then I got into a little bit bigger shows. And then I had an accident.
Oh no.
Yeah. It was a little bit of a more rowdy crowd, and I got pushed into a speaker and I injured my wrist and had a lens crack. Like they were like
Oh
head
no.
banging and like were pushing me forward, and I was by the stage and they just kind of like pushed me into the speaker. And I was like, okay, I need
Jeez.
a more controlled environment. Um, so I reached out to a local photographer in Newark, Delaware. Her name is Marissa Zimmerman. She owns Marissa Taylor Photography. She's basically like the number one photographer in Delaware. She's like known for like her maternity and newborn photography.
Hmm.
She's a wedding photographer also. So I reached out to her, was her assistant for a little while, then became her second shooter. And then I started my business in June 6th of 2016.
Wow.
So that's how I got started. And actually, my friend, my friend Lisa, she helped me actually come up with my business name and my logo. She does graphic design and things like that. And she went to school for it, so she's like really, really good at making logos.
Hmm.
So we sat down and went over it, kind of what I wanted my brand name to be, what I wanted it to like kind of say, and then the colors and the logo design and everything. So she helped me out with that. So I'm like super happy to have like those kinds of people in my corner for things like that. So that's
Yeah, I
how
mean
my
that's
business got
super
started.
super useful to have a friend who can do that.
Oh yeah, she's really, really talented. Um, she we actually met in college. We
Hmm.
both went to the Moore College of Art and Design in Philadelphia.
Hmm.
So that's how I met her, and then we just stayed friends after that. So our friendship has been, I mean, it's over 10 years, so that's a long friendship, right?
Wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a really, 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 really long friendship. So she's a really great gal. I'd love to help her, get more work and stuff like that, because I know that that's something that she loves doing. So she tried doing the freelance thing for a little bit. Um, but yeah, that's how my business got started.
And how has so you've been running the business for, about 4 years plus. Now, in comes 2020 and outbreak happens. Like, how has business changed? Because I can imagine as a photographer where you have to be on location, you have to see people, you have to photograph people. How does this change your job?
So it's actually been really difficult as of late. My year last year was absolutely probably the best year I had. It was booming. I had a bunch of weddings that I had booked and all that. And so when this thing hit, I really didn't get any bookings at the time. I know a lot of people that were planning their weddings were kind of like pushing it off now, so they weren't sure whether or not they were going to book a date or just hold off altogether or do like an elopement thing or something like that.
Hmm.
So it's been hard. As of right now, I've been trying to do something for the students local in my area, the college students, the high school students that have just graduated.
Hmm.
Um, Basically, it's like offering them a session that they can post date at any time,
Wow.
um, and actually want to be able to go onto campus, take a shot of their school, and then offer that as like a background to like Photoshop themselves into that background. That way, they have something, you know,
Yeah, on the
they can,
portfolio and
yeah, so I know a lot of them did their formal senior photos, all dressed up and everything, but I wanted to do something with their gown. Because
okay.
everybody when they graduate they have their diploma, their gown,
Yeah.
they're at their school with their family, their friends taking pictures and stuff like that, and they don't get to do that now.
Mm-hmm,
So I've gone on Facebook and found it's called Adopt a Senior
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
in our county, and basically it gives parents an opportunity to share their senior students that have graduated, and then businesses can reach out to them, offer them like graduation packages. Some people have donated cakes. Some people have like donated, a DJ donated his services for like a party, like beyond like when all this stuff cools down.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
He's offered his services to seniors that want to have like parties when all this is done.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to offer a session. Other than that, I've kind of just been trying to get into product photography, which is something that I've always enjoyed. This way I can still work
Yeah, yeah.
and not have to interact with people, potentially exposing them or exposing myself. So, and I want to work more with a lot of smaller businesses right now, especially with this downtime that a lot of them may have,
Yeah.
may have a chance for them to get professional pictures done. And then like when everything opens up, they can like, wow, their customers with
Mm-hmm.
these great images of their product and things like that. So that's something that I've been trying to focus my attention on. So like, while it's been like sad on the one side with not having any bookings, it's also giving me the time to reorganize my business, which is like,
That's really cool. That's actually an interesting pivot to go from using this downtime to go into product photography. I was actually interviewing another photographer the other week, and he does like food photography, and he was saying how a lot of things have changed, but he's also been trying to do a lot more work at home. But it seems like this idea of branching out and using this opportunity to teach other creatives has been really, really helpful for a lot of us. Now, as a photographer myself, I have a tremendous amount of respect for fellow shooters because, we're oftentimes portrayed as, oh, anybody can get a camera, and photographers are just like lazy creatives who just snap photos. But like being on set and going through the editing process and having to worry about your marketing is no small feat. And I could gush on and on about like photo nerd stuff, but I actually wanted to hear about your experiences like within the industry, because for me as an Asian male photographer, people treat me like I'm supposed to be taking photographs. It's like maybe it's the Asian tourist stereotype or whatever, but like I know that, I was oftentimes given the benefit of the doubt because I looked like I belonged, that I was a photographer. But I know that isn't always the case for everyone in every place. Like when I moved to Texas, a lot of cops were very like suspicious of me taking photos. Weird. But I'm curious to know, like, because there's definitely a lot of hidden racial politics when it comes to the photography industry, like who you can photograph or the clients that will hire you and the people who will actually pay for your work and support your work. As a Black woman photographer, comparing the way your journey has been to maybe the journey of your other photography peers, how has it been for you over these past 4 years?
so I'll definitely say that it's been a challenge. So so Marissa that I mentioned before, basically my mentor, she's a Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
So she was one of the first people that I met in the industry that was a person of color. So like that made me feel like, okay, I can do this. Like,
Yeah.
Like around, you see a lot of white photographers, even in like when like Nikon or Canon has a lot of their photo conventions or summits or whatever those things are called.
Like they're featuring like new products. Like I think it's like
Yeah.
Photokina or something like that. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah, a lot of those people that attend those conventions or their speakers are predominantly white. So
Yeah.
since I've been in the industry, there's been a lot of movement to get more inclusion, a lot more, Black, brown, yellow, different faces
Mm-hmm.
other than just the white that you usually have.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was something that kind of kept me going because I'll be honest, there were times where I felt like, okay, nobody wants to hire me. Um, people see me and they're just like, oh, she doesn't know what she's doing. And I was just like, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. If they can do it, then I can do it.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say that like the lack of business that I've been getting is mainly because I'm Black, but I will say that in the area that I live now, it's very, very white.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of those folks to compete with. They already have, their client base. They already have, that welcoming face that everybody knows and goes to already,
Mm-hmm.
And those people are white. I don't know anybody directly in my area that's Black or Spanish or Asian or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that, that, is well known. And when I moved here, I'm sorry, so I have anxiety.
No, please,
So if
keep
I'm like
going.
talking and breathing like heavy or talking too fast, just let me know so I can slow down.
No, you're perfect. You're
Um,
perfect. You're good. You're good.
so when I moved here to this area, I looked into, the other photographers that are there, understanding the niches that are common, just kind of getting the lay of the land as far as within my industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I came to like a realization that I may possibly be, if not the only Black person photographer, the only Black female photographer that photographs like weddings and things like that.
Wow.
I know there are some like hobbyists that are in the area that are of color, but as far as like on the list,
Yeah, like to have an actual business and an actual process and all that.
yeah. So like that's like kind of been like the thing. So it's like between not really being well known and then being this Black face in a very white community,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's hard sometimes to like put myself out there as easily as other people have done.
Yeah.
Like I'll admit, I reached out to a couple news stations in the area, a couple papers when I wanted to push a give a session, buy a session, give a session, which is basically you can buy a session
Mm-hmm.
and you'd be able to donate a session to somebody that that's an essential worker. So it could be
Oh, okay.
doctors, nurses, people who are, in the grocery store, even if it's like military, the police, firemen, firewomen, anybody like that, you could donate a session to. And like this is something I was like, okay, it's something that will keep my business going, but then it'll also make sure that you're giving back to, everybody that's out there because they're getting thank yous and sure, they're working long hours, they're getting paid for it, but it's like, are they really feeling like a thank you?
Yeah.
All the hard work that they're doing. And it's like, as a business, as a photographer, this is my way of giving back,
Yeah.
So I did that and I didn't hear a peep from anybody,
Gosh.
nobody. And there's been reports on like people that have gone out and doing the port sessions, which I won't do because for one, I don't have like the super long lens.
Yeah, like a telephoto lens.
Yeah, so I don't have something like that where I could just stay in my car like on the other side of the street while they're on the porch. Like I can't do that, and I'm a very personable person, so I like to like
Be up close to your subjects
yeah
and
and interact, So
yeah.
and I just recently got diagnosed with COPD,
Mm-hmm.
so that kind of like puts me at risk with the whole coronavirus thing.
Oh
So
no.
like that's why I kind of
Just
tried to
avoiding
stay
the risk.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and then there are people that are just there's people doing porch sessions. There's people that are like doing different things that are photographers. And I just felt like I was like, okay, I gave them literally an opportunity to not only support a small business, but then to also, let essential businesses know that there's this small business that cares about you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it kind of just kind of hurt a little bit. Like, like putting myself out there and like, boom, like
Yeah.
nothing. No, not even a, hey, this is really, really great. um maybe they had too many features, they could probably say just anything, just a response to say, hey, thank you, we got your
Like to
press
acknowledge
release,
it or something.
something,
Yeah.
and I kind of got nothing. And it's been really hard dealing with that. And then networking has been kind of hard too. Like I said, I don't want to put it all into the fact that I'm Black, but other than not being well known, I can't really be well known if nobody,
No, I like
will
it.
work with me. It's weird, like putting all the pieces around together
No,
to
and I totally
explain
know what
it.
you mean because it's like, you know, and I talk about this with a lot of creatives of color, how, you know, being in our industries, it's difficult because at the end of the day, our ability to put food on the table is oftentimes based off of the subjectivity of like a couple white people. You know, whether it's a CEO of your company or whether it's your predominantly white clients, like oftentimes you have to make yourself fit and try to stand out. But you know, it's one of those things where it's like you can't pinpoint and go, oh, here's the article where they specifically said that they're not going to want to work with me because I'm Asian or whatever. But you can tell just by the way that you're treated when you're around these communities, with the way that you are excluded from, you know, certain communities. It's just it's one of those things where you almost sort of drive yourself mad thinking like, is this me? Is it like what is going on? Because it's like you can tell that something is there, but you can't pinpoint it. You can't say, oh, it's this person or that person, but you know it's there, and you know that it is hampering down on your opportunities, especially when you look at your skill set and you're like, man, I'm like, not to brag, but it's like if you look at your skill set and you're like, man, I'm like a much better photographer, or I have much better like images or a much better camera set or whatever. But it's like, and you're just looking at like, how is that person? I try to avoid
doing that, honestly.
I can imagine it must be tough.
Like I never want to look at somebody else and just be like, oh, my pictures are way better. Because I mean, as a photographer, I'm always growing, always learning. I'll never reach my peak, but like at the same time, it's just like, you know, like I'll sit and think, it's like, okay, well, why did they, especially if say it's a photographer that's probably like say like within like the same range I am.
Yeah. Same price range, you know, and same area and all that.
Yeah. It'll be like, okay. And even if our styles are like slightly similar or anything like that, it's like, okay, then I have to like sit down and be like, okay, well, what made this person get a booking over me? Because I'll get inquiries, right? And I'll follow up, but I'll never get them. And then later I'll find out that they went with another photographer. I'll just be like, why? And I never want to go to that place, but like looking at everything in a row, it's just like, okay, is that a possibility? Like, so on my website, you don't really know what I am until you go to my About Me page. So I changed that recently. I haven't published it yet, but I've been using this time to change my website. So now my face is on the front page of my website.
I love it.
And I'm hoping that will, you know, open something more up as regards to the clients that will book me, things like that. Because like I said, I live in a really, really white area. So there are Black people, there are Spanish people here, and I want them to be able to feel comfortable working with somebody, you know, that looks like them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, sometimes that'll be why somebody doesn't book a session. You know, they'll be like, well, I wonder if, you know, I'll feel comfortable working with this photographer. You know what I mean? In the industry, I've been in a couple different photography groups, and you'll get clients or photographers who have said, oh, you know, I don't really know how to, and it's an honest conversation, which I can appreciate about them, but they'll be like, oh, well, sometimes I have trouble editing darker skin. So sometimes I'll try to avoid photographing, you know, people like that.
Yeah.
And I'll just be like, but you can learn how, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
You can learn how. So then I'll look around at some of the pictures and you'll see like a huge difference between, you know, between the person that's with them, if they're lighter, or you'll see maybe sometimes they'll post a before and after, and you'll see a complete tone difference.
Yeah.
In their editing. And, you know, and that's like a big thing. It's like, you don't want to change the way your client looks. You want to be able to accentuate how they look, but don't change how they look.
Yeah. And that's why I actually love the fact that you were making that shift and putting yourself on the front of the page, because like you said, you know, there are an enormous amount of photographers who have no idea how to how to photograph anybody who doesn't have pale skin. Like the minute anybody has like a tan or anybody who has darker skin, it's like, oh my God, like what are these dials and knobs? It's like, hold on a second. Like you can, like, you're like, you have this Instagram where you're talking about like, oh, I'm shooting in all these different lighting conditions and I have like these low light cameras and all these different light setups. And it's like, but then you can't photograph different people of different skin colors. And like you said, like we're not even talking about the editing part, because the whole editing phase is a whole different ballgame. Like, you have people who like come in one shade and then the edited version is like, who is that?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I've had photographers that are like they'll have model friends, and they'll like, there was this one post where they shared a model that had gotten a shoot done and she wasn't happy with the end result, because not only did they slim her way down,
Mm-hmm.
but they like upped her tone by like 4 shades.
Oh,
Like, she was like, this doesn't even look like me. And then
yeah.
like, and then not only do you have to worry about the photographer, but then like you have makeup artists too. So it's like maybe they were trying to
Mm-hmm.
pick up where the makeup artist dropped the ball, you know, or maybe it's the makeup that kind of like messed with the way that, because like, if anybody knows anything about makeup and like lights and cameras and things like that, if you don't use good makeup, we'll say good makeup, you
Mm-hmm.
know, either the tone on your face will be different than the tone on your neck,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or you know, you'll have a lot of splotches and things like that. So like, there's a lot of different factors, but like, and at the end of the day, you have to be able to know how to photograph different people, or else you'll get, and I hate to say this, but you'll get a lot of photographers that will have a very bland white portfolio
Yep.
because
Yep.
they don't know how to photograph other people.
Yeah.
Like, they just kind of like, well,
They're
or
just
you
like,
know, it's like,
no, thank you.
or
Yeah.
maybe they do, and because they don't feel confident in that session or anything like that, they
Mm-hmm.
won't put that on their portfolio.
Yeah.
You know, so they'll just share what they're really, 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 really good at, which is photographing
Other white people.
white people.